Welcome back to Wellness Wednesday. I want to first start off by thanking our Wellness Wednesday sponsors, Epigenomics, Genentech, Merck, No Shave November, Taiho Oncology, Turtle Beach, and Quicken Loans. We're here with Danielle Ripley-Burgess. She'll be sharing her story and some tips for gardening. Welcome, Danielle.
Hey everyone, well I am Danielle Ripley-Burgess and welcome to my garden and welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I am really excited to be hosting today's Wellness Wednesday, and I think it's kind of funny. Today is all about gardening, and the reason I think it's funny is I need you to know I am not a master gardener, but I am somebody who was interested in growing her own food this year and took it upon myself to really dive in and learn how to do this. And I am so excited to share with you guys what I have learned and show you that I really think anybody can start gardening. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So here's what's up in the next few minutes. So I'm going to share a little bit of my story with you. I'm going to give you a tour of my 2020 garden, and then we're going to plant something together. I'm going to show you how easy it can be, and I'm going to just tell you guys how this has really helped my mental health during COVID-19. So I know some of you guys because of Fight CRC, but not all of you guys know my story. I was on staff with Fight CRC for about 5 years. I was doing communications and left that role, but have stayed involved as an advocate and as the editor of Beyond Blue. And we're so excited. By the way, the new spring issue is going to be out here just in a few weeks. I can't wait for you guys to see it, so be looking for it. But I love editing Beyond Blue because I am a survivor. And as a survivor, I get to stay connected and share your stories and share my story, which I always say starts in a toilet paper aisle when I was a really embarrassed preteen that I couldn't imagine my mom buying toilet paper in the store because I was mortified that people might know that I went poop, that our family went poop. And so that was my mindset. The embarrassment I carried about my body, about being a young girl, that's where my mind was when I first started seeing blood in the stool. And I think I was probably like 8th grade into 9th grade is when I first started seeing it. And I didn't say anything for a long time. It's kind of a long story, but basically 2 or 3 years later, my secret came out. My parents found out that I had been seeing blood in the stool, and I was rushed to a GI, into a colonoscopy, and woke up with really big eyes, going something's wrong, and a few days later we found out what that was, and it was stage 3 colon cancer. It's crazy to think that was almost 20 years ago now. It'll be 20 years this January. And at that time, early age onset colorectal cancer was not even talked about. Of course it was a thing, I had it, but it wasn't being discussed, and I didn't really know what to do. So I plowed through 6 months of treatment, and then I went back to high school. I was a junior in high school when I was diagnosed. I just wanted to graduate. So I went back to high school, I graduated, and I thought cancer was just a thing of my past, like a fluke that happened to me when I was a kid. And then when I was 25, I went in for a routine colonoscopy and woke up to those same big eyes. And my GI said, Danielle, this doesn't look good. And I was actually diagnosed with stage 1 colon cancer again. A few years after that, we realized that I do have Lynch syndrome. So we know that's what's behind my cases, but I have had colon cancer 2 times at age 17, age 25. And I'll tell you that a lot of people have asked me over the years if having cancer, the second cancer, was easier than the first because I'd already had it. And I thought, actually, no, not at all, because cancer at 17 was physically harder on me, but cancer at 25, stage 1 cancer, was actually harder in other ways. And I really realized that cancer is it's an emotional, it's a mental, and it's a spiritual battle in addition to a physical battle. And that was my experience with that second diagnosis. But what came out of that actually has been really neat. And a few years after I was diagnosed with stage 1, my second cancer, my husband and I actually went to a class at my cancer center, and it was called the 7 Levels of Healing. And during that class, they used a really powerful analogy that has stuck with me for all of these years. And they actually explained and they encouraged us to see our bodies as a garden. And what they said is that most Americans see our bodies as machines. And so think of it like a printer, which I have a love-hate relationship with printers anyway, but think about like a big printer that you plug into the wall and you feed it paper, and then you expect to hit print from your computer and for it to shoot out something on the other side of that tray, exactly what you wanted it to do. And if the printer's not working, then you look, okay, is there a paper jam? I'm gonna troubleshoot it, or maybe I just changed the ink, or heaven forbid you gotta call a repairman to fix the printer. But it's like in and out, in and out. You have these outputs you expect. And a lot of us treat our bodies like we treat the printer, where we think it's just going to function the way we expect it to while it's sitting on the shelf plugged into the wall. And the class really started teaching us, though, that instead of seeing our bodies as machines, we need to see them as gardens. And so when it comes to a garden, it doesn't just, you don't just plug in a garden and then it produces food that's gonna keep you alive. But to actually grow a garden, it takes a lot of different conditions, and you have to be very aware of several things, like your soil condition, what you're planting, where you're planting, the sun affects it, the water affects it, the rain, the animals. And so that is one thing that gardening has really helped me understand, is taking care of my body as a cancer survivor, especially what I put into my body, whether it's food, whether it's thoughts, whether it's stress, is going to affect it. And so to care well for myself means nurturing it, like I'm going to show you these plants, like I nurture these plants. That's what it takes to actually be well and healthy. And the more I've adopted that mindset of I'm not a machine, but I am a garden, the healthier I've found that I'm getting. So with that, what do you guys say we take a little tour of this garden that I've grown this year? And we're gonna start down here at my strawberries. Now, one really cool thing that I love about strawberries is they're perennials. And you might remember from science class, a perennial means that they come back every year. So I did not plant all of these plants this year. What happened is we planted just a couple of strawberry plants a few years ago, and now you can see what's happened. Strawberries take 3 to 4 years to grow, so just know that the patching has been taking some time, but you can see the strawberries have started to bloom. There's tons of green strawberries on the plants, so I'm just hoping for several sunny days so that these ripen up, and it's gonna be so good. Sweet strawberries from the vine are some of the best things to eat. So this is a strawberry patch. I've got a few other vines on the sides. I've got a cantaloupe over here. I've got a watermelon I planted. Those take quite a bit of time to come up and actually produce fruit. So lots of waiting involved in those. Now here's 4 different rows of food that I've got going on. So this is a bed of lettuce. So I've got 2 different varieties of lettuce. Lettuce grows pretty well in the cold and it loves water. So you can see it's coming up really well, and I'll probably cut this pretty soon and make a little salad out of it. This is not so pretty. These are okra, and I've never grown okra before. And honestly, I don't know if these are gonna make it. I think okra takes a lot of water, and I thought it was gonna rain last week and it didn't, but we'll see if these survive. They might not make it. But this is a row of okra. This is a row of green beans, and that's coming up pretty well. And then this is a row of peas. And so the peas are actually starting to bloom. And these are vining plants, and so I put these cages up, and you can see really cool, the vines have like started to wrap around. So hopefully we'll have peas really soon. And last, we have a row of kale. Kale, I think actually in the Wellness Wednesday I saw some recipes from Cook for Your Life with kale, and so this is a really, really good superfood. So I thought, well, we like to use it in smoothies especially, so we've got a row of kale growing. And then I've sandwiched the kale with some herbs, and I'm trying to grow them in pots. And what's really fun about gardening is that you can try all kinds of different things. And so I'm trying to grow herbs in the ground and in a pot, and then I'll show you my garden here in a little bit, my herb garden. So I'm experimenting, which is really fun in the garden. I can't wait for these peas to bloom, because peas are like one of my favorites. So this was my garden I just showed you guys in the ground, and the reason that it's surrounded by wire is because where we live, we happen to get quite a few rabbits, and rabbits especially love the lettuce and all kinds of stuff in here. And so when we put this garden in, we tilled the ground and then we dug deep and then put some wire in there so that we're trying to protect the plants, and it's really helped. It's kept the rabbits out of there, not the robins, which all the birds are still flying in here. To the right of me though is a raised bed. So when you garden, you have a few different options of how to plant your food and where you're going to plant it, and it all can really depend on where you live and what you have energy for. So last year, my husband Mike actually used some of these old boards we had laying around, and he built this raised bed for me. And this year we have deemed it our salsa garden, and we've got tons of tomatoes. Most of what you see here are tomato plants, and I've got a few jalapenos. And if you are also, a lot of times people want to start with tomatoes and growing tomatoes because they're easy to grow, like on your deck or on your porch in buckets. You can grow them upside down. There's all kinds of ways to grow tomatoes. So one thing I learned that I'm going to pass on to you guys that you might find helpful is that when it comes to growing tomatoes, but then some other plants like green beans are another example, you really need to look at what kind of plant you're growing. So on the tomato plants, for example, there's tomato plants that are called indeterminate or determinate. And what that means is that indeterminate plants vine. So it means they're gonna take off. And so I have one indeterminate plant here in the cage. And so what I'm hoping is that that's gonna grow up and it's going to produce tomatoes all summer long. And I've caged it so that it can start growing anywhere. But then these other tomatoes in here, I was really careful this year and bought what's called like bush tomatoes. And so these are supposed to kind of stay where they are and not go all over the place. Because last year I just planted any kind of tomato and the vines grew and they were all over each other and they didn't do very well. So here's a gardening tip for you guys. Just look at what kind of plant you're planting and what kind of room that you have. So I'm super, super hopeful for the salsa garden this year. Here is another little garden area I have that I put in last year. And this actually isn't producing any food, but I'm calling it my butterfly garden. And last year I celebrated 10 years since my second cancer. So I've been 10 years cancer free. And I was looking for a really meaningful way to celebrate that cancerversary. Maybe something that didn't involve so much sweets and cake, although I love to bake, like I love all of that stuff, but I wanted something that maybe could come back year after year. And I love butterflies. I love what they symbolize and just the story of the butterfly. So I thought, well, that would be really cool. So I've planted a few native plants. I live in the Kansas City area, and so this is what should attract them. So you can see my butterfly garden starting to come in. And actually this just bloomed this week. And it's really pretty. And so just a extra tip, just gardening does not necessarily have to involve food. So maybe you're into flower gardening or butterfly gardening, and if you're looking for some really neat ways to celebrate and honor milestones in your life, I found planting perennial plants especially, so these come back year after year, kind of like the strawberries. That is a really, I don't know, it's a powerful way to remember what you've done, especially when you tie it to our cancer stories like that. Okay, continuing on our tour, here is the herb garden. And I have tried to grow herbs in the past, and I've been hit and miss, but this year it's going really well. And I'm trying a few different things. So I've got a long planter over here. I've got some different varieties. Here's basil, oregano. These are chives that are getting ready to bloom, and they'll be like really big purple balls when they bloom. And here's some mint. I've got a few flowers just to add some color, and then here's some more pots with herbs. And I wanted to say, if you guys are interested in gardening and you don't know where to start, growing herbs is a really good place to start, because all you need is a small little pot like this. It doesn't have to be terracotta, but just a small little pot or planter, and put the herb in there, and then they all come with these little plastic guides to tell you what each herb needs. Usually it's some kind of well-drained soil and water. And these are actually really helpful too, because I realize not everybody has a backyard like this, nor does everybody have the time, interest, or energy to garden like this. But if you're even a little interested in doing something with gardening, herbs are a really good place to start. If you have just a small patio, say you live in the city, like you're in New York City, and you want to do something, growing herbs might be a really good thing to do. You could even, some people even grow these in their kitchen windows, like they'll hang them in their kitchens. So herbs are fun. Herbs are also really handy because if you are trying to eat healthier, but I don't know about you guys, but I've been trying to eat healthier lately. That's part of this whole garden thing. Sometimes like lean protein and vegetables, like you can only make them so many different ways before they start tasting the same. Roasting them or sauteing them, but when you have especially fresh herbs in your garden, that can really change the flavor of things, and it can really make some things that were getting bland or old yummy just because you added a different herb to it. So herb gardens are really fun, and yeah, this year I've kind of gone all out on that. Okay, the last thing I was going to show you guys, and this is what we're going to actually demonstrate today on our Wellness Wednesday, is gardening in what's called smart pots. And I learned about smart pots from an app that I downloaded a few months ago, and I was going to tell all you guys about this app because if you're interested in doing this kind of stuff, like anything with gardening, and you don't know where to start, download this app. It's totally free. It's called From Seed to Spoon, and I believe it's in the App Store on iPhones and for Android. But this app has been the #1 reason I have done all of this with confidence, because it's taught me how to grow each, we're outside, that's funny. It's taught me how to grow each food you see. And so the app will show, you'll go in and look at what you want to grow, and it'll show you how to grow it from seed, how to grow it from starters. And so the family that started this app was talking about smart pots. And if you're watching this and you're like, Danielle, I am so inspired, how do I start gardening today? But you don't maybe have the time to dig into your soil, or you don't have the space for like a bed, like where my strawberries are, and you don't have the energy or time to build a raised bed, go get some smart pots, because all you literally have to do is buy the smart pot, fill it with soil, and you've got a garden bed ready to plant in. So these have been really fun. So let me show you how these work. I went ahead and prepared the smart pot for you. I'm pretending I'm like on a cooking show with you guys. So they come in this like felty fabric, and the reason that a lot of gardeners are using these is because unlike a raised bed, the oxygen is starting to come into the sides of the plant. And so not only do you get kind of the water coming down, but there's an advantage of what's coming in on the sides. So that's why these have been really helpful. So I actually have 2 smart pots going for the first time this year, and I'm kind of testing this out. I have a smart pot right here that I started a few weeks ago with a little zucchini plant, and you can see that it's starting to grow. And then I bought another one that we're gonna plant here today together. And then I just bought this, and we're going to plant some seeds. We're gonna do some carrots in this and see how it goes. So when you're planting, the thing you want to remember, whether you're planting in the ground, like my peas for example, or you're starting a raised bed, or you're starting a smart pot, the very first thing you have to think about when you garden is the soil. And the soil condition will basically make or break your garden. And another thing that's important to know is depending on where you live, like your soil conditions will differ. And so gardening advice for like us in Kansas City, Missouri is different than gardening advice for somebody in Alabama or in Maine. So the first thing you really need to do is kind of look at some local gardening tips and see what zone you live in, and then see what's recommended based on your area. But I will tell you that no matter what area you live in, soil will be really important. So to start my smart pot, what I did is we emptied an entire bag, it's like a 2 cubic foot of compost into this soil. And the reason I'm just starting just with compost is because this is often called black gold, and there's so many analogies to compost in life that I won't go into on this video. But let's just say that compost basically takes food matter and sticks and leaves, and it combines all of this like really great matter into a really great soil. And so this has all the nutrients that a new baby plant would need. So I've been filling my gardens with compost this year, and I think it's really been helpful on getting these plants a good healthy start. So you need to have a good soil. It needs to be kind of loose like this and go through your hands. And I'm showing you this too because this has been actually a really healing thing for me in my mental health, is getting my hands dirty. Now I will say, if you're a patient on treatment right now, you kind of do need to be careful and work with your oncologist regarding what exactly you can do out in the soil. But if you've got a green light, there's something about like getting our hands dirty that takes us back to like the days when we were kids and we just didn't really care. And it's very healing. And I think that's part of why gardening is just a really healing thing for me, and a lot of people I've heard is something about this just brings a lot of peace and calm. So start with really good soil. So get your area, get your soil ready, and then once your soil's ready, you are ready to plant. And I'm gonna show you how simple gardening is. You just need like a shovel, soil and area, and ready to go. So we're gonna plant this first, and we're gonna plant a winter spaghetti squash, and I'm gonna put this squash in with my other squash because when you're planting, you need to put plants that grow together go to better well. And if you go to that app that I'm recommended, the From Seed to Spoon, they will tell you what plants are companion plants and what plants are enemies. So they'll let you know, oh hey, don't plant kale next to your tomatoes because that actually will harm it, and instead plant kale on its own and put green beans next to peas. All of that kind of stuff. Go to the app. It's super helpful if you're a beginner like me. Okay, so this is called a transplant. Now, if you are trying to garden and you just want to get something in right now, like this is very attractive to you. You see a smart pot, you see the soil, and you see this, and you just want to put this in. This is totally an easy way to go. It's not the cheapest way to go because you're gonna have to, you'll spend probably 2 times the money buying this as you would like a packet of all of these seeds. But I'm gonna say this year there has been a seed shortage. So you can't find seeds in all areas. There's not a ton of them out there. So this might be a way to go if you're looking for something fast and you're just trying to get started right away. So you will buy whatever you want to buy. So for example, I bought a winter spaghetti squash. It's a really great option if you're trying to cut some carbohydrates, if you're trying to get more vegetables in. We use spaghetti squash in replace of spaghetti noodles a good amount around here. So I'm gonna take it from the plastic. You can't compost this, so this will need to be recycled. But I'm gonna take it out and I just kind of massage the roots like this to help kind of break this up before I plant. I'm gonna take my shovel and I'm just gonna dig a hole. Now this soil in here, you guys can't see it, but it's just like this. It's just coming up, it's really loose and nice. How deep I dig, I looked that up on the app as well. Sometimes the little plastic cards will tell you how deep to plant your plant, but I looked it up on the app, so I'm kind of aware of how deep to go. So I'm gonna dig a hole, I'm gonna drop this entire square into it. I'm gonna loosely cover it up. And that's it. Seriously, it's that simple. I'm gonna take a little bit of water, and when you put a new plant, you're gonna wanna water it. There's all different kinds of ways to fertilize plants. and they all have different schedules. So again, this is where information's helpful. Even if you don't get that app, it might be helpful even to like grab a gardening book from the library or just Google like how to plant spaghetti squash, and you'll find all kinds of articles on what to do and how to do it well. So this, seriously friends, this is how easy gardening with transplant plants are. Somebody had started this from seed, and at the garden center I bought it, and now my job is just to keep it watered. I'm gonna pull off like yellow leaves when I see it, because that'll be if I leave them on, they'll take the nutrients from the mother plant, so I don't want those on there. And then this also, so some plants need to vine, just like you saw in my peas. So squash is a viner, it likes to crawl. So that's why I kind of have this cage around it, because as this will take off in summer, it'll start wrapping all the way around here, and so I'm trying to give it really good support. If I don't do that, just so you know, if you have viner plants and you don't provide support, they're gonna sprawl out of the pot and they'll just take off all over your yard until they find something to climb onto. So that's why we trellis with this. If you are doing a trellis, if you're looking for this, there's all kinds of things you can use. So I actually used like an old fence that I found. Josh Wimberly, he is an advocate, and he used one of those old closet organizers, like the white ones with all the holes. I was like, that is a great idea. So gardening will actually change your mind about a lot of things, because things that you thought you were gonna throw out, like there was no use for them, actually out here in the garden you might find like there is so much use for like so much of what you would normally trash. Everything from organizers to food scraps to different ways to label what you planted. So that's a really cool thing too. Okay, last we are going to plant from seed. Now I'm taking a little risk with these, because I'm gonna plant carrot seeds, and I think these are kind of hard. So this is like full transparency, authenticity, like we're gonna try this. So a lot of times when you're starting it from seed, it's gonna tell you exactly what to do. So this one tells me to sow seeds per inch, 4 seeds per inch in the row. And so I actually do keep a ruler out here to help me like know. And so what I'm gonna do is, because this is such good soil and you can just move it around, the rows are actually really easy to create. So I'm just gonna take kind of my ruler, I'm gonna create a row like this. I'm gonna open my seed packets. And then, like I said, it says so 4 seeds per inch. So I'm just gonna put a few in my hand. If you've never seen, that's what carrot seeds look like. Kind of cool. So I'm gonna lay my ruler out. There's also a lot of tools if you do find yourself planting with seeds. There's some cool tools. If you're gardening with kids, there's like a square and it has different holes of where the seeds go if you're doing square gardening. And so there's some cool things out there if you're planning to get really into this. So I'm gonna plant seeds there. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'll get about seven in for this row. So I've got my seeds all here in a row, and now I'm just gonna cover them up loosely like that. Now carrots also need to be kept damp and have some water. Because this Smart Pot, I'm only gonna put carrots in this one. I'm not too concerned about marking them. Now, if I was gonna put another food in here, like say I was gonna try and grow spinach, I might mark it with where I planted, which is really helpful, especially when you've got a bed with a lot of different things. But for today, I'll just cover up the row, and then I might do one more here. It's not helping. So I'm gonna make my row, and I need all this soil, so I'm just gonna move it to the side. And carrots are kind of cool because you can plant them throughout the summer. And one thing I learned this year I didn't realize is that a lot of food can be planted year-round. I don't know why that sounds surprising to me. I guess it's because I don't consider myself a master gardener. But a lot of times you see people gardening in spring. You know, you see us in May getting our gardens in and planting, but really all summer long, we can be planting food. And so it just kind of takes learning and researching. And one thing I've really enjoyed about gardening is that I'm getting to learn again. And I don't know about you guys, but I kind of get to a place where, you know, when we're working in jobs or when we're kind of like adults, we're expected to know everything. Like, we need to have an answer and we kind of need to be resourceful. And sometimes if we're not intentional, we like lose the wonder of learning. And so I've realized this year as I've been in my garden, like, man, I'm learning like so many new things, and I want to learn about this. Like, some things I don't want to learn about, like, you know, if you're probably getting a big education on colorectal cancer right now for some of you, that you don't want to really be learning about that, like cancer. But gardening's a fun thing to learn about, because we all need to eat and we could all benefit from these really nutritious plants. And so it's been one thing that's been really healing. So I've got my seeds in. I'm gonna water this pretty well, and I'm gonna keep an eye on this over the next few days, especially to make sure it stays damp. And seeds are kind of like taking a risk. I've planted seeds before and they didn't come up, and then I've planted seeds before and they just took off. And you don't really know in gardening, but you kind of hope for the best, and then you learn from a lot of experts. And so, like I say, I read websites and blogs. My husband Mike got me a really cool book for our anniversary from like gardening tips from all of these great gardeners. And so it's a really great activity where it's okay if you don't know a lot. And like I said at the beginning, I'm new at this. I know this looks like a lot, and I've been out here a lot this year. I think social distancing has driven me out here to the garden, but it's been a really, really cool place. And so if you're looking for something new to try, another way to do wellness in your life, I really recommend getting out here and just trying to garden. And if something doesn't work, then try something else. And like I said in the beginning too, you know, this has really helped my mental health. And I think that sometimes, you know, being inside or watching the news or social media, it can be scary, and there's so much going on that is unexpected. We can't control it. And the thing about gardening is that while so much feels out of control, even still in gardening, I can't control if these carrots are gonna grow, but I can control the conditions of this smart pot. Like, I can control if I water it, or I can control if I prune my plants, or if I take off the dead leaves. And something about that has really helped me kind of regain some sense of control in my life. And I think it's really helped just like my spirit and my mental and emotional health. And the last thing I just want to say about gardening is that, you know, this is all about hope. And we at Fight CRC, we are the relentless champions of hope. And hope is sometimes hard to come by. And so if you find yourself today where you want to hope, but you don't know how to hope anymore, you know, getting a garden is a good way to learn how to hope. Because when I planted all of the food that you see out here and all of the flowers, I hope that they'll grow. Like, I hope that the butterflies are going to come to my butterfly garden this year. And I hope that I'll be sitting here in a few months and see them. Or, man, I really hope that I'll be able to make salsa this summer from the salsa garden, or that the strawberries will finally ripen. And while I can't control it, and I can't for sure say that that's going to happen, I hope that it does. And even just feeling that hope out here and the wonder of wondering what's going to happen with these plants, what I can experience as far as hope in the garden is transferring into so many other areas of my life. And in every way possible. And so I just say, hey, get out there, try a garden. If you don't go all of this, go get a smart pot. This is like 15 bucks. Or go get a little pot and grow an herb, because that'll help your heart and it'll help you hope again. Thank you so much. Thanks to Fight CRC for having me. Thanks for coming to do a garden tour. And here's my challenge. So all of you guys, please look for Beyond Blue. I want you to read it. I want you to share. Please tell me what you think about it. It's a digital only issue because we had to make some changes with COVID. So please share it with your friends. And if you decided to garden, so maybe you watched this and you already had a garden, or this inspired you to start one, will you please show us? So go out to your garden, do a strong arm selfie, post a picture on social media, tag me and tag Fight CRC, and I cannot wait to see what you guys came up with.
Thank you, Danielle, and thank you all for watching today. We hope you'll join us next week as Dr. Edward Cregan discusses the healing power of pets. Have a great Wednesday.